My soul is shining from the light in my heart as I praise my Lord right from the start. Tears of joy overflowing from my eyes. All the pain in the past was a blessing in disguise. In the middle of the night, I will supplicate to you. As darkness fills the room, the prayers make me feel brand new. Tranquility, the break of dawn comes too soon. Belief in your mercy makes me feel I'll never lose. أشرقت نفسي بنور من فؤادي حينما رددت يا رب العباد.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everybody. This is your brother Hazik from Muslim Peer Services, back with part 2 of our immigrants' rights with our brother Waliullah from MCN, Muslim Community Network. And we're going to jump right in, start right from where we started, where we left off at, inshallah. If you have any questions, like we said, you can put it in the chat, whether we're on Facebook or any other platforms. We have Sister Nairi, alhamdulillah, watching those questions and whoever's coming on live. And then we also going to have the panel here, inshallah, shortly. So go ahead, brother. Wali, go ahead, take it away, inshallah.
All right, fantastic. Thank you so much again, Brother Hazik, and everyone here involved at Muslim Peer Services, whether or not they were able to make the call yet. We still have some folks joining us. It's still a weekday evening. That's not lost on us. But yeah, we should still have very informative discussion, and questions are always open, whether through the Facebook live stream or the Zoom chat box. So we'll pick up right where we left off last week. Though I'll do my best to sort of briefly summarize the stuff that we covered last week. So we went over a glossary of some of the most common terminology you'll see in immigration, but also, first of all, really going over what our key learning objectives of the workshop are, which are, one, to learn how past, present, and likely future changes in federal policy may affect you, your family, or loved ones, whoever happens to be an immigrant, whether it's through any specialized benefit programs such as green cards, DACA, TPS, or they're just undocumented, period, whatever the circumstances are. Two, learning how to identify and respond to federal immigration officers and navigate any of those encounters safely, whether they happen at home, the workplace, or in public spaces, and making sure you have an emergency plan in place to address that. And thirdly, which we've yet to cover, but we'll hopefully get to today, learning how to access free and safe legal services and resources. And also, upon the request of Muslim Peer Services, we'll also be covering worksite enforcement actions, considering that significant portion of recent migrants, or whatever the circumstances of an immigrant might be, their labor circumstances might be a bit more precarious, wherever they might be working at, especially if there's the possibility of work site abuse. There might be fear of reporting that, or say because of their own lack of proper immigration related documentation. There might be a fear of an ICE raid at work, how to sort of de-escalate that or properly prepare an employer to protect themselves from an ICE raid, themselves and their employees. And yeah, I guess we can get right to it. But yeah, so yeah, objectives. Like I mentioned earlier, we went over, glossary, including, some of the, really important federal agencies you'll see that administer immigration policy directly, namely the Department of Homeland Security, which is in turn comprised of ICE and the USCIS. ICE directly enforces immigration law. USCIS administers America's naturalization and immigration system. Any paperwork relating to immigration, whether it's citizenship, green card, TPS, DACA, whatever immigration benefit related paperwork or application you're submitting, that goes through USCIS. You can think of USCIS as the carrot and ICE as the stick. And additional terms, undocumented immigrant itself, the phrase I will be using most commonly to refer to someone without legal immigration status living in the U.S., public and private areas. The distinction is usually being public areas are areas where anyone, including a ICE agent, can go without a judicial warrant. Private areas being spaces not generally accessible to members of the public, including the workplace, your car, or your home. These are usually places that ICE agents would need a warrant to, get into. Warrants we got into last time, the differences between a, ICE/administrative warrant, judicial warrant. ICE/administrative warrants usually they're internally issued, and there's a tendency of, and the purpose of it to mislead whoever they're attempting to enforce immigration law on, into them thinking that it's an official warrant, when at the end of the day they can detain or deport an individual with a ICE or administrative warrant. They would still need a judicial warrant signed off by a judge. Immigration enforcement actions, any official actions that are taken by the federal government to enforce immigration law, including conducting investigations and making arrests or deportation proceedings. We also went over executive orders and federal policy changes, such as DACA, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, which enables undocumented children to obtain work authorization as well as stay of deportation if they arrived at the U.S. at a very young age. People that were on the program between 2012 and July 2021 can still renew their status. However, the federal government is currently not accepting first-time applications as of 2021. This is an internal ICE policy on determining who might be considered too much of a financial liability to grant an immigration benefit application, though there are usually some exceptions to that. Temporary protected status, TPS. This is essentially somewhat of a refugee program that grants the same benefits of DACA, namely work authorization and stay of deportation to specifically immigrants from a select list of countries. I could forward the list again if that becomes necessary. Parole and Central American Minors Program we also went over, which is more specific to sort of migrant-related policies that have been implemented during the Biden administration. And any additional clarity that's needed on that, just let me know. We also went over instructions and best practices for recent arrivals when updating their address and ensuring they are regularly receiving the proper documentation they need to proceed with their case, whatever immigration benefit that they're applying for. Also just samples of those documents, resources where they could continually monitor their case status, the address for immigration court, as well as the New York City ICE office, generally just for their ICE check-in. We wouldn't just recommend you to go to ICE just to go to ICE. Also, properly distinguishing the differences between ICE and NYPD in terms of enforcement duties as well as their officers. Sorry, their official uniforms. Uh, Given that, because of their badges and, what you'll usually see on their uniforms, especially you'll see the words police on both of them. It's important to remember that ir irrespective of your immigration status, you should still be able to report a crime to an NYPD officer or a state police officer, and they shouldn't be asking for your immigration status. That's the opposite for an ICE officer. They don't have any sort of purview when it comes to state or local law enforcement, so don't be fooled when it comes to their uniform. And yeah, it's important to keep these visual examples in mind, especially considering at times when you're encountering a nice officer in the neighborhood or they're coming to the door, they won't explicitly tell you that, they're a nice officer. And yeah, examples of badges here. We also went over some of the most common places for ICE interactions, work, home, and public spaces, and how to navigate interactions in each of those. Also, protected areas. Protected areas are areas where ICE isn't allowed to conduct any enforcement actions on, unless if they're, more sort of, um, you know, uh, I'd say criminal or, life-threatening circumstances, which are still rare enough. But protected areas will usually include any educational facilities such as K through 12 schools or higher educational, institutions. Um, Shelters, hospitals, clinics, places of worship, could be a church, synagogue, mosque, mandir, gurdwara, public ceremonies, including funerals, weddings, and public demonstrations or rallies. And yeah, the list does go on with this a bit more, but this is still an, internal policy, so it's still up to ICE's discretion what is or isn't a protected area at any point in time. ICE inside courts. ICE agents are not allowed to make arrests inside or around New York State courthouses without a judicial warrant. And yeah, we went over the ways that ICE is usually able to obtain the information necessary to determine whether or not someone, still according to their own internal rulings, who is considered to be, detainable or deported. Usually this is through information they can access through state or local law enforcement. Anybody that's been convicted of a crime, even if they didn't go to jail, it doesn't matter how long ago it happened. If you've been fingerprinted for it, they have access to your criminal record. And yeah, immigration applications, any sort of interaction with the immigration system, whether it was visas or at the border, they'll usually have access to that information as well. Though still, there's a list of, uh, there are groups of people that are usually more of a priority for arrest and removal. Yeah. And yeah, we also went over best practices to, keep in mind when interacting with ICE. Also, what you can do if you feel like the situation is getting enough out of control, aka hostile, and how you can report, the outcome of that interaction safely. We also went over examples of administrative warrants and judicial warrants. Also, in-depth, sort of step-by-step, um, examples on what to do if ICE, ends up coming in your home, workplace, or in a public space. And yeah, let me know if anything else past this is ringing a bell, or, if you feel like I've covered it last week.
Yeah, so far I think you covered most of it, from what we saw.
All right. Is this slide ringing a bell?
There's some things we know about being arrested. No, not
Okay,
this
so
one.
might have just stopped here then.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. Cool. So I'll just pick up right off there. Okay. So yeah, summarizing that information. And okay, let's go. All right. So things to keep in mind if you're being arrested by ICE. Um, yeah. Uh, One important thing to keep in mind is, there's not a guarantee that the agent is going to be able to speak in your language. Um, like any interaction with ICE, if you decide to speak with ICE, anything you say to ICE can be used against you. You may also choose to remain silent. You can also state, if you decide to speak, that you would wish to speak to an attorney before, saying anything or signing anything. You can also tell them if you have a medical issue or need to immediately arrange for childcare if you're a parent. Do not lie or give false documents because that could further jeopardize, your ability to remain in the United States safely. Um, Also, yeah, um, you know, like we, went over in previous encounters with ICE, even though you could, express, verbally that you don't consent to a search and seizure, you can physically arrest. Also, especially if this encounter is happening at home or, in a public space, if you're being detained, people in the community may and do have permission to film ICE so long as they don't directly interfere with the officers.
Mm.
If ICE agents are trying to talk or arrest you, starting or continuing to film yourself could put you at risk, but it's still safe enough to let other people do it, so long as they're at least 6 feet away, I'd recommend.
I got a
If
question.
someone you know,
I'm sorry, really quickly. It's on the topic real quick. If you have, because I know speaking like giving false information to a federal officer is a felony. Is it the same as when you're talking to an ICE officer? If you give them false information, they can charge you with it?
I don't know what the exact charge is, but generally it could, I do know enough like it could ha still have a legal impact on your case.
Okay. Yeah, I thought so. I just wanted to make sure because I know speaking of federal, when the FBI comes, if you give them false information, they've charged people with up to 7 years behind it, 5 to 7 years, for lying to a federal agent. So that's why I said it may be the same. I'm not sure. Okay, just wanted to ask. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's fine. Okay. But yeah, if someone is being detained by ICE, you can still ask where they're being taken. And we have a slide where we'll be going over the ICE locator and best practices on, or just how to, again, find out where your loved one is if they're in ICE facility. All right. Things to keep in mind if you are arrested by ICE. The detention process could be, confusing and lengthy enough, especially if you're going in without, um, you know, uh, proper legal advice. And usually immigration authorities, again, they're not going to walk you through everything themselves. So it's important to know enough about the information here. Like we went over in the last slide, the agents may not be able to communicate with you in your language. You have the right to an attorney and can also speak to your attorney or, take the time necessary to, obtain an attorney if you don't already have one. If you're being detained, you have the right to call an attorney or your family. You also have the right to be visited by the attorney within the detention facility. You also do not have to sign anything. You have the right to speak to your attorney before signing anything. You also have the right to contact your country's consulate, whatever country you came from prior to arriving in the United States, if it wasn't like a stranger. Yeah, what you best know how to answer that. Also, important enough, just because this isn't on the slide here, write down the name and the phone number of the deportation officer that's assigned to your case. I'm just going to type that in the chat. Okay. Also, yeah, uh, some additional contextual information for this. For immigrants arrested by ICE in New York City, usually there are two common facilities they'll either be transferred to after being processed in New York. There's a local jail facility in New Jersey or upstate New York, but both of them, have contracts with ICE to hold ICE detainees. Like I mentioned earlier, people can look on the online ICE locator to confirm whether and where their loved ones have been detained by ICE. It's locator.ice.gov. And we'll also go over the specific information that you need for that. And yeah, the federal government doesn't provide lawyers to immigrants facing deportation. However, city-funded legal representation is provided. There are some organizations that do fortunately do this sort of work. We can put their contacts and information in the chat as well. And yeah, so we can move to the next slide. Oh, all right. Yeah. Things to keep in mind if your loved one is detained. If your loved one has been detained by ICE and you don't know where they've been taken, you can find them by using the ICE locator, locator.ice.gov. To use the locator, you would need your loved one's country of birth and a number. This is usually their designated case number. It's just a way of referring to that. Or if you don't have their A number, you can use their country of birth, first name, last name, and date of birth. Uh, yeah, and even though it's generally safe to use the locator website, uh, one thing to keep in mind is that especially depending on the state and locality, as well as the facility itself, each ICE facility is going to, have its own rules about visitation and sending money to detainees. So you can look up visitation and other information regarding each detention facility at ice.gov/detention. Yeah, facilities. And yeah, you can call the jail to confirm that the information is still correct. Generally, people that are, undocumented, they can visit their loved ones, and their immigration status usually shouldn't be flagged if they're visiting them in the facility. However, again, it's still important to review each jail's requirements for identification and whether background checks will be required for each visitor. If you're worried about the risks of visiting a loved one, we'd recommend that you speak to an attorney because again, it could depend on the state and locality. To find out when and where your loved one's next hearing will take place, you can call the Executive Office of Immigration Reviews hotline, 1-800-898-7180, and input your loved one's A number. If they appear in the court system, but they don't have a court date, you can press 3 to check for old decisions. If it says that a court ordered removal, it means that your loved one will unfortunately not be getting a new hearing, and it is extremely important for them to get legal help immediately, because considering that they've been, ordered removal, it basically means that they're already on the fast track for deportation. If you like to access this, case information online, you can go to the online EOIR case system at, acis.eoir.justice.gov. And yeah, the link is right on the slide. And yeah, you can input your loved one's A number on this as well. Feel free to take a screenshot of this if you find this helpful. Okay. So how can you best prepare for a possible immigration enforcement action? Some ways to, do that. Usually, yeah. First one would be attending a Know Your Rights presentation, just like this one. Presentations like this can help equip you with the necessary information for interacting with federal immigration officers, as well as keeping yourself up to date on, the most recent policy updates on immigration policy year by year. Also, number two, creating an emergency plan for you and your family in case you're detained or deported. This would comprise of, having a, emergency contact ready, and also memorizing their phone number. This should be someone that you trust. It could be your lawyer as well, but generally, could be friend, family member. And yeah, choosing a standby guardian for your children. A standby guardian is a person that you choose to take care of your children when you're not able to for up to 1 year. Making someone your standby guardian doesn't mean that you're giving up your legal rights as a parent. It only means that you're giving the guardian permission to make certain decisions for your children in your absence. To learn more about standby guardians, you can call the Moya Immigration Legal Support Hotline. Um, and yeah. Uh, Third, getting an immigration legal checkup to see if you're eligible for any specific immigration benefit, and learn more about your currently, or future immigration options. Even if you've consulted with an immigration lawyer in the past, you might want to do so again in case, something might have changed, especially if it's, an immigration law. We especially recommend you get an immigration legal checkup if you have any concerns about your immigration status, if you'd like to learn more about your eligibility for a specific immigration benefit like a green card or citizenship. Also, if you need help with any, immigration application, it even say if you have a disability, if you need assistance filling that form, or, specialized language assistance. Also, if you just like to consult with safe, free immigration legal service, provider, an immigration legal checkup could, help you do that. If you'd like to learn more about your rights as an immigrant New Yorker, or, even make a complaint about whatever circumstances you've been, you might be dealing with, if, it might be an instance of workplace abuse or immigrant-related discrimination in a public space, you can call 311. And also, yeah, another thing to keep in mind is, preparing for a possible immigration enforcement action. Um, we recommend that you exercise caution about carrying documents that identify you as a citizen of another country, and to, try keeping that documentation as secure. Even if you say lock proper, documentation, but you'd like to carry some, something that, something better than nothing sort of thing, rather than losing your official document, still, a paper copy we'd recommend. Also more on, emergency planning. keeping all your documents in a safe place, such as a locked box, that, your emergency contact as well can access. We'd also recommend, again, just like your emergency contact's phone number, that you memorize any other important phone numbers that you might need, including your lawyers. Um, and yeah, so we can move on to immigrant services. Okay, yeah. Avoiding immigration fraud. This is very important. So when getting legal help, especially, whether you've been recommended, by a friend, or you might have seen an ad online, um, especially if you can, afford, you know, um, you know, uh, yeah, or whatever your circumstances are, looking for specialized, immigration, legal support. It's important to, ask questions and go over, certain information that you need to keep in mind with, whatever a purported legal service provider is claiming to have. You should always ask for a proof of license and accreditation. Only a lawyer or accredited person from the Department of Justice can provide you immigration-related legal advice. Um, Always ask for a written agreement of services to be provided. Don't pay for any government application forms. All those forms are available for free online. Ask for a written receipt. Keep originals and copies. And yeah, go to providers that have a physical location. Don't sign blank, incomplete forms or anything you don't fully understand. Also, in other countries, public notaries might have some immigration service related functions. However, in the United States, notaries, they can help you with translation, photocopying, notarizing, taking your photos, and helping you get necessary documents and medical tests for an application process, but they cannot provide you legal advice. If you'd like to report any instance of immigration fraud, you can call the New Americans hotline here at 1-800-566-7636. Okay. Right, so on immigrant services, the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs provides legal services to, uh, help immigrants, get the support they need, especially through their own dedicated constituent service, line, 212-788-7654. And they also have Moya Legal Support Centers. Moya Legal Support Centers can help you connect to free and safe immigration legal help in your New York City community and in your language. Legal support centers provide free, comprehensive, and confidential legal screenings to determine eligibility for important immigration benefits. They also provide free, safe immigration legal help for a range of immigration benefits, including citizenship, green card applications and renewals, DACA, TPS, and more. Legal support centers are located in neighborhoods, schools, and hospitals throughout the 5 boroughs. Appointments are very limited and only available to individuals and families with a household income of maximum 200% of the federal poverty guidelines. So yeah, if you meet those requirements, you can make an appointment by calling 1-800-354-0365 between 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, or you can call 311 and say immigration and legal support. The Moy Immigration Legal Support Hotline provides assistance in more than 200 languages. Through the hotline, you can receive connections to immigration legal assistance. The hotline, however, does not answer general questions about immigration policies or New York City's response to newly arriving immigrants. Yeah. All right. Just to review some of the information that we went over, um, including some of the information from last week. Question one, if ICE agents don't have permission to enter a private space, what kind of warrant do they need?
Judicial.
Ding ding. All right. Question two, do you have the right to ask to speak to your lawyer before talking to ICE or signing documents for ICE?
Yes.
All right. Three, can you call 311 for details on any city services?
Yes.
Winner, winner, chicken dinner.
There it is.
Okay, any questions so far? Let me review the chat.
We have some
Okay,
from
that's great. Yeah.
Facebook. Would you want to wait till after, or because they're on different subjects? So I don't know if you want to go. If you want to go.
Well, the questions. Oh, I was looking at the list of legal resources that
Mhm,
you just put. Yeah, this is great.
mhm.
Unlocal, yeah, we're likely going to be partnering with them in the coming few months on, yeah, school enrollment.
Great, great. Yeah, and we also put that same list up on the Facebook. There's people on there to watch. So yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
And yeah, we can always answer questions towards the end as well.
Okay. Yeah, because this one it has to do a lot with
Yeah.
housing and employment. Yeah, we're just gonna go on it and maybe you'll answer some of the questions along the way.
All
Mm.
right. All right. Now we'll be moving on to city services and resources. Okay. So here in New York City, there are several services and rights available to all New Yorkers, regardless of immigration status. Under New York City law, specifically Executive Order 344, Executive Order 34, city services must be available to all immigrants so long as the immigrants meet other eligibility requirements. This includes undocumented immigrants. Um, Generally, even though all benefits and services you can generally sign up for through the city. Yeah, again, so federally funded programs like SNAP, for instance, even though they're restricted to certain immigrants under federal law, um, you know, you know, there are enough city benefits that you should generally not have too much of a worry for. Under the same law, Executive Order 34, city employees cannot ask for your immigration status unless if that information is necessary for them to provide services. For example, health insurance enrollers can ask for that information to see if you qualify for Medicaid or Affordable Care Act subsidies. NYPD officers might ask you for that information if they need it for a criminal investigation. Those exceptions aside, city employees should not ask for your immigration information. City employees are also prohibited from sharing any of your personal information with federal government except for in very limited circumstances. Okay. Yeah. And yeah, to clarify on earlier, unless if it's been specifically stated that a federally or state funded program cannot be, it's only, only citizens can qualify for it. Any city service or resource cannot be denied to a New Yorker, irrespective of immigration status. All right, so we will talk about the federal mental health hotline 988, which is a bit more recent. Not federal. Okay, so 988 is your connection to free confidential crisis counseling, mental health and substance abuse support information, as well as referrals if you'd like, external support rather than just a one-off call. You can reach the toll-free hotline 24 hours a day, 7 days a week by phone, text, and online chat. Behavior professionals there can link you to the services you need. 988's counselors and peer specialists are trained to listen to you and provide the following services. Short-term counseling, 1. Suicide prevention and other immediate crisis intervention, 2. Peer support, 3. Other information referrals, 4. To contact 988, you can call or text them, or you can, uh, you know, chat online with the live counselor at 988lifeline.org. 98 counselors, again, are available 24/7. They can provide support in over 200 languages over the phone. Text and chat support is available in English and Spanish. Health insurance is not required. Depending on your phone/text service, you may be charged a fee. Another thing to keep in mind, however, depending on the service that you're referred to, some of those external providers might have a health insurance requirement. Some of them might have if they don't have, a health insurance requirement, they might have a sliding scale adjustment. So yeah, some of them have some flexibility options. Yeah, for more information, you can visit New York City 988 at cityofnewyork.us. Right to education. Um, so yeah, in New York City, every child has a right to a public education, regardless of immigration legal status. Upon enrollment, DOE staff should not be asking about or keeping a record of the student's immigration status, as well as that of the family member. DOE staff should also not release student information unless required to by law, such as criminal investigation. Non-local law enforcement, including immigration enforcement, are not permitted to enter DOE schools without proper legal authority. We went over protected areas last week. K through 12 public schools, also fall in that category. Yeah. So just a bit more information on DOE guidance to school administrations regarding ICE enforcement. Current federal policy limits immigration-related arrests, interviews, searches, and surveillance at sensitive locations, again, including schools. They can only be permitted to enter DOE schools when absolutely required by law and only after a school has consulted with Department of Ed lawyers. If an ICE officer goes to a school for immigration enforcement purposes, the school safety agent will call the principal, who will then in turn meet the ICE officer at the safety desk. The principal will advise the officer that he or she must wait outside of the school building while the principal consults with DOE lawyers. The principal will also notify the parent or guardian after consulting with DOE lawyers. Generally speaking, federal law enforcement officers will only be permitted to enter when they have proper judicial warrants or in very rare situations where certain types of emergencies, exist and require urgent action. Protection from discrimination in the workplace. All employers in New York City with 4 or more employees are required to comply with the New York City human rights law, regardless of whether their employees are full-time or part-time, permanent or temporary, paid on the books or off the books, or are paid or unpaid interns. Some provisions of the law protect employees regardless of the size of the businesses. Uh, Importantly, employers cannot pay workers lower wages or no wage because of their immigration status. They also cannot harass or make fun of workers because of their nationality, religious beliefs or attire, accent, or immigration status. They also cannot punish workers for speaking their own language. They also cannot threaten workers about calling the police because of their immigration status. They also cannot refuse to hire someone because of their nationality, religious beliefs, attire, or accent. Right. Now we'll get into bias-based profiling in, by law enforcement, which, happens commonly enough whether you're an immigrant or not. Bias-based profiling by law enforcement occurs when police officers target you for arrest or other criminal law enforcement action, not because of any specific information linking you to unlawful activity, but instead because of your protected status under the New York City human rights law. Protected status means that everyone in New York City is protected from bias-based profiling from law enforcement based on their actual or perceived race, national origin, color, religion, age, immigration or citizenship status, gender or gender identity, sexual orientation, disability, or housing status. Housing status, more specifically, could, refer whether or not you live in a private building, public housing, or you're in the shelter system or just, homeless outside. You have the right to file a complaint with the New York City Commission on Human Rights, regardless of your immigration status. Your immigration status and other details of your complaint will not be shared with ICE or any other immigration enforcement agency. You can call 311 and ask for the New York City Commission on Human Rights, or call the commission directly at 212-416-0197 if you believe a police or peace officer has violated the New York City human rights law, against bias-based profiling. You can also make an anonymous report. You don't have to reveal your identity. The commission actually, encourages New Yorkers to report discriminatory acts, even if they wish to remain anonymous. And yes, like it was, implied and mentioned earlier, this doesn't just cover the IPD and its police officers. It also covers peace officers employed by the city, such as sheriffs, as well as, guards in city facilities. This also applies to special patrolmen appointed by the NYPD, such as school safety officers. And yeah. Yeah. So resources for immigrant crime victims. Um, if you've been the victim or witness of a crime, um, even if it's, an even more, say, sensitive circumstance such as labor or sex trafficking, or if you're not sure about the circumstance or nature, entirely how to, uh, yeah, uh, If you've been the victim of those crimes, you can contact the NYPD. As mentioned before, irrespective of your immigration status, police officers should not ask for your immigration status. Services available to immigrant crime victims in need include emergency shelter, counseling, healthcare, childcare, and other family services. You can call 311 to learn more about these services. If you've been a victim of domestic or gender-based violence, you can call the New York City Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-1-HOPE. You can also just dial 4673. Sorry, yeah, HOPE is 4673. I misread that. Yeah. You can call this hotline for immediate safety planning, shelter assistance, and other resources 24/7. If you or someone you know uh, may have been a victim of labor trafficking, you can email the New York State Department of Labor at trafficking@labor.ny.gov, or you can call 877-466-9757 Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. You can also call the National Human Trafficking Hotline at 888-373-7888. The National Human Trafficking Hotline is open 24 hours a day. Other ways you can contact them include texting Be Free to 233-733 or to chat with someone at humantraffickinghotline.org. Within New York City, you can call 212-335-3400 if you reside in Manhattan, and 718-250-2770 if you reside in Brooklyn. You can also learn more about immigration options such as U&T visas available to immigrant survivors of trafficking or certain crimes. Call 311 and say immigration legal support to make an appointment with a trusted immigration service provider in your community and in your language. You can also visit New York City Family Justice Centers, which provide free and confidential counseling for victims and survivors of intimate partner violence, sex trafficking, and elder abuse. All centers are open Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. No appointments are needed. Walk-ins are welcome. Through New York City Family Justice Center, survivors of domestic and gender-based violence and their children can get connected to organizations that provide case management, economic empowerment slash financial assistance, counseling, civil, legal, and criminal legal assistance. Located on located across all 5 boroughs, family justice centers are safe, caring environments that provide one-stop services and support. Key city agencies, community social and civil legal services providers, and district attorneys' offices are also located on site at family justice centers to make it easier for survivors to get the help necessary. Spoken translation services are also available on site, and locations are wheelchair accessible. You can call ahead to request any other necessary accommodations. Reporting hate crimes and bias-based incidents. Um, so before we get into that, it's important to go over the specific definitions of each of these. Even though both of these, have the impact and intention of causing some sort of harm or distress on an immigrant, both of them have different, legal definitions and, consequences, for the perpetrator. Um, so yeah, in New York City, a hate crime is defined as a crime that involves a physical attack, threat of an attack, or property damage that is motivated completely or partly by bias towards a perceived or actual part of a person's identity. And it doesn't even just have to be one category, it could be multiple. So it could be that, this person is Muslim and an immigrant, or this person is Latino and gay. This person is, old and disabled, things like that. So, This could include race or color, religion or religious practice, gender expression, sexual orientation, ancestry or national origin, disability, or age. Hate crimes can also be committed. Sorry, again, yeah, I already went over this. It can affect multiple aspects of a person's identity. Um, Hate crimes can be committed either against an individual, a group, or a property. A bias-based incident, however, is when someone verbally harasses or discriminates against you based on your perceived or actual identity. However, the incident itself does not, involve a physical attack, threat of attack, or property damage. Uh, an example of this could be, a restaurant owner, tells a Jewish customer, Jews are not welcome here. I wouldn't mind if the Holocaust happened again. Saying that would be a bias-based incident. But if the same person's like, oh, I hate Jews, and they punch the person, that would be a hate crime. Um, yeah. Also, obviously, same goes with any category. So to report a hate crime, you can call 911 and say hate crime for immediate assistance. If you've witnessed or experienced a hate crime, you should be able to get the assistance and report that hate crime when you call 911. You can alternatively file a police report or contact your borough district attorney's office. If you don't need immediate assistance or an emergency response, you can also report the hate crime to the local police precinct in which the crime occurred. If you don't feel comfortable calling the local police, again, you can call the local DA's office in the borough that the crime occurred. You also have the option of calling both to keep your options open. If the situation is deemed to be a possible hate crime, the NYPD Hate Crimes Task Force will be notified. You can also contact a community organization or advocate. Our organization, Muslim Community Network, we work on hate crimes, whether it's reporting as well as facilitating hate crime prevention workshops. This is something we'd love to do on a future Wednesday. And yeah, if you've experienced a bias-based incident or discriminatory harassment, you can report it to the New York City Commission on Human Rights by calling 311 and saying human rights, or by calling 212-416-0197. You can also call the Commission on Human Rights website to file an online discrimination report. The website link where you can file a discrimination report is here. And irrespective of however you decide to pursue your reporting, you will not be asked about your immigration status. And also, yeah, important to keep in mind, language assistance should be available, so don't be shy about asking that. Okay. And yeah, also additionally, in uh, enough instances, a crime victim advocate could be assigned by the city to follow up with you within 24 or 48 hours by phone or by mail. One thing to keep in mind is these calls could sometimes come from a block number if they're calling from a police precinct. If they're unable to reach you, they will leave a voicemail with a phone number so you can call them back. Right. So we can get into workers' rights and worksite enforcement. All right. So worksite immigration enforcement actions refer to when ICE comes to a work site on official business to, enforce immigration laws and to make sure that employees are authorized to work in the United States. Generally, especially the previous administration before this and what could be the, you know, incoming one, namely the Trump administration, they had made a point of increasing worksite enforcement actions, as was seen by increasing investigations, audits, and arrests at workplaces across the country. Uh, in October 2021, DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, appointed during the Biden administration, issued a policy memorandum about worksite immigration enforcement, directing DHS to no longer conduct mass worksite raids. However, these enforcement priorities could change, especially within the next couple months. So we'd still like everyone to keep the following information in mind. Especially if the off chance a nice raid happens. So terms that you should keep in mind when we're talking about worksite immigration enforcement. First term is work authorization or work permit. These will usually go hand in hand, but this is usually a document or any documentation issued by the federal government that gives immigrants permission to work legally in the United States. You might also know it as an EAD card or Form I-765. The next terms are Form I-9 and Form I-9 audit. The Form I-9 is a document that confirms a worker's identity and permission to work in the United States. All workers must complete the Form I-9. A Form I-9 audit is when ICE goes to a specific business to check that all employees have completed a Form I-9. This could sometimes turn into what is usually known as an ICE raid. Form I-9 audits are usually what precede an ICE raid. An ICE raid itself is a targeted immigration enforcement action with the purpose of arresting or detaining individuals. Our next terms, public and private areas, especially in the context of, the work site. Public areas in a business are, any spaces where people, especially that aren't employees, can go. This could be like the lobby or the storefront. Next term, private areas. The private area of a business is a space where only employees can go. This could be the back room, kitchen, break room, wherever is usually, employees conduct their own business. Any terms I should provide additional clarity on, or we're good? Okay. Okay. So types of ICE encounters workers might experience. Now that we've already talked about these a bit more, we're going to go a little bit more detail about the different kinds of ICE worksite immigration enforcement actions. These include the Form I-9 audits and ICE raids. Form I-9 audit is, again, when ICE goes to a specific business to check that all employees have completed the Form I-9 and already have permission to work in the United States. If they cannot find the completed forms for any employees, the employer has 10 days to give ICE the updated forms or fire the employees who do not have them. The employer must tell all employees who are affected by this. Yeah. ICE raid. An ICE raid is a targeted immigration enforcement action with or without notice to the business. And the purpose of this is to arrest or detain workers and potentially employers, as well as take business records. During the ICE raid, ICE might, they'll usually attempt to block exits, stop work, gather workers, interrogate, search, and seize documents, as well as property, and arrest those who are unable to prove their legal status at the time. It is important to know that an audit or raid may lead to arrest and or deportation proceedings for some employers and employees. Okay, yeah. All right, workers' rights when it comes to paid sick and safe leave. Some of this information was a bit more topical and specific to COVID, but it's still important enough to keep in mind regardless. Um, Workers in New York City have rights regardless of their immigration status to paid sick leave. The amount and type of paid sick leave is determined by the amount of people you employ and the number of hours they work. Employers with five or more employees who work more than 80 hours per calendar year in New York City must provide paid, safe, and sick leave to employees. Employers with fewer than five employees must provide unpaid sick and safe leave. Yep, safe and sick leave. Covered employees have the right to use safe and sick leave for the care and treatment of themselves or a family member. Anything more? Yeah. Also, domestic workers are allowed up to 2 days of paid safe and sick leave per calendar year. Just because, yeah, domestic workers wasn't mentioned here, but yeah, a lot of domestic workers happen to be immigrants. Also, yeah, um, acceptable acceptable reasons for safe and sick leave include mental or physical illness, injury, or health condition, medical diagnosis, care, or treatment of, mental or physical illness, as well as preventative medical care. Okay. All right. So more on paid sick and safe leave. Some of this more topical to COVID. In response to the outbreak of COVID-19, New York State implemented programs to guarantee workers job protection and financial compensation in the event that they or their minor dependent child are subject to a mandatory or precautionary order of quarantine or isolation. The amount of COVID-19 related paid sick leave an employer is required to provide depends on the number of employees they have and the employer's net annual income. Most New Yorkers will now receive at least 5 days of paid sick leave due to COVID-19, in addition to their employer's existing paid leave and disability benefits policies. If you work for a business that was not impacted by this legislation, you still qualify for paid family leave and disability benefits through your employer's existing policy. For more information, you can go to newyork.gov/COVID paid sick leave or call the novel coronavirus paid sick leave hotline at 844-337-6303. All right, deferred action for workers. Uh, so sometimes workers can be afraid to report violations of the law by exploitative employers, especially with more sensitive circumstances such as labor or sex trafficking. Uh, Or, there will still be that hesitation to cooperate in investigations because they might fear removal or any other sort of immigration related retaliation from their employer. DHS does offer discretionary protection on a case-by-case basis to victims who lack employment authorization. There are multiple mechanisms that can provide employment authorization to non-citizen workers and protect them from removal, including deferred action, parole in place, or T and U non-immigrant visas. Labor and employment agencies may also request expedited processing of a worker's pending application, petition, or request. Deferred action can defer deportation against a non-citizen for a certain period of time, usually up to 2 years. If the non-citizen is granted deferred action, they're considered lawfully present in the United States for certain limited purposes while the deferred action remains in effect. Please note that DHS can terminate deferred action at any time at its discretion. Requests should be submitted through intake point at USCIS that handles requests for deferred action related to labor agency investigative efforts. USCIS will forward to ICE any requests for deferred action from non-citizens who are in removal proceedings or have a final order of removal so that ICE consider the request for deferred action. When granted deferred action, a non-citizen can apply for it and obtain employment authorization for the period of deferred action if they demonstrate an economic necessity for employment. For more information, you can visit the DHS website link attached. Just give me one moment. Just need to get the charger. I have several slides. Okay, that's all right. I think that's it then. My laptop battery was just about to die.
The laptop knew what was up. We do have some questions that came from Facebook. If you're ready for
Hold
those.
on.
Hmm.
Yeah.
You ready?
Yep, shoot.
Okay, so because of the overcrowded shelter system, the city implemented a policy of 60-day limit on shelter stays for, excuse me, okay, a 60-day limit on shelter stays for migrant families. What, if any, legal recourse does an undocumented person have to avoid homelessness?
I mean, that's something we're still monitoring right now. It's a sucky situation that's happening.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, if nothing really changes with that, I mean, yeah, there is that risk that they will become homeless unless if the policy changes, it's still up to Eric Adams. But yeah, some of the resources that you listed,
Mm-hmm.
hopefully, yeah, if they're families, there should be hopefully some, nonprofit service providers or community centers that at least do a better job of helping them get, housing assistance better than say, getting stuck in the shelters. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's a sensitive situation. And yeah, we don't want to provide wrong information on that either.
True, sure. And I know, just speaking professionally, that we try to get people, even the ones that are documented, like the citizens who are here, try to get in the shelter system now. It's a whole different process now because of they're so overcrowded. They have to go to like a central intake thing in the Bronx and then get delegated to something close to where they want to be if there is any space. It's a lot. It's a lot where before you would just be able to go to the shelter and get a bed. It's not like that anymore.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think part of even before this was just the way the arrangement was set up in the de Blasio administration, which was if you build X amount of, I don't know, I lose track of this stuff sometimes.
Hmm. Yeah, I got you. I got you. Okay, let's move on to the next question. And why is it, if immigrants have legal rights and representation, are they subject to being held longer without bail hearings?
Was the question again?
Why is it, if immigrants have legal rights and representation, are they subject to being held longer without bail hearings? Bail, yeah, without being afforded bail or having bail hearings, or they have to stay longer for bail hearings.
Uh, Yeah, that's a, more question for the criminal system, but
Mm-hmm.
more the stuff we went over is more when you're dealing with, officers, prior to that sort of this is if they don't even have any probable cause to approach you and say, "Oh,
Right.
we think you're likely to commit a crime." But irrespective of that, even if, say you're in, uh yeah, irrespective of that, you know, yeah, you shouldn't be, yeah, uh,
Get you.
yeah,
You shouldn't be held longer just
yeah,
because of your status. Yeah.
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 It still happens though.
Yeah. Yeah. It does. I mean, it happens to citizens. So I can imagine, you know, as I even at work is, it happens to a lot of us, unfortunately, but it happens. I think we have another question.
Want to
Uh,
give a better answer to that at least.
Huh?
Want to give a better answer to that at least.
No, no, it's all good because it makes, is one of those things where like the justice system has already been overcrowded, especially in New York City. We always had an overcrowding issue. And then on top of that, now you add a whole nother layer of, and I think that speaks to this next question, right? It says, how does NYC status as a sanctuary city affect this relationship with federal authorities, therefore putting immigrants in the state of not knowing the law that applies to them? Which is kind of like that because now it's like you don't know what your status is, and then I think even the government officials or the city officials themselves don't know, you know what I mean, like how to deal with you in certain instances. So now, and we see that, like I said, on a regular basis where you know NYPD may not know certain laws, laws in certain situations that they can and cannot can and cannot do. The ICE officials, they're opposing their will on certain things. And then you have other groups and everybody's trying to figure it out at the same time. So then now, in which case,
Policy can change again in the next
okay.
few months.
What do you say?
And policy can change again in the next few
Yeah, and
months.
that's what I'm talking about. Like nobody knows exactly what's going on at any given moment. So it kind of puts the immigrant in a hard place. Like, I don't know, is it federal law I follow? Is it the state law? But this is the same thing as, unfortunately, black folks we go through this country. It's like that. It's like we don't know if this applies to us or if it doesn't, because we're not taught these things in school anymore like we used to. About the laws, how laws are made. We used to have to go through this stuff in high school and junior high school. It's no longer taught like that, as is what your rights are. Just because the federal government says something, it might not actually be, actionable or being implemented in your city or your state. You don't know that, So you may think you're free and clear of something. Give you an example, like the what was it? The highest court in America says the Supreme Court says you don't need a license to travel, to drive and to travel. But we know in New York City, you drive without a license, what happens? You know what I mean? It's just like it's not a difference, but it's a nuance in the law that if you don't know any better, you get caught up in it and don't know. So it's weird, how it is, but the immigrants get caught in the middle just like most of the other citizens too. And especially if you don't speak the language, if you don't know what's going on. Like now, even in Staten Island, we see a big influx of people who are sleeping on the streets because they're no longer allowed in the shelters. So we're seeing this. But yeah, if you can touch on that question, yeah, it's just because it's a sanctuary city, like how does it affect the immigrants who are here on the ground? Do you know, like, what
Yeah.
exactly are they supposed to, well, besides taking courses like this and listening to, what you're trying to do, what else can they do?
Okay. So your question again was more specific to this is more specific to the sanctuary city policy or what
I,
city services
yeah, I
migrants.
think, yeah, how migrants says, how does NYC's status as a sanctuary city affect its relationship with the federal authorities, therefore putting the immigrants in a state of not knowing the law that applies to them? That was the question. Yeah.
I mean, generally, yeah, with New York City's status of a sanctuary city, I mean, under, the principle of it, it's, supposed to, not cooperate with, uh, you know, ICE in any, shape or form. Again, enforcement priorities for that can change, but, the way we've seen that sort of, you know, play out, politically, in a, in the past couple of years was, with the influx of migrants, initially, it started with the order when Governor Greg Abbott initially he wanted to take advantage of the situation by saying, "Oh, democratic cities, they call themselves sanctuary cities, so let's
Mm-hmm.
bus all of them there and not do any of our part,
Mm-hmm.
you know, share our burden," which is, I mean, like Texas has their politics. I'm not even gonna get into that, but just like if you're, like irrespective of New York City or even California, sorry, LA, San Francisco, whatever big cities have their sanctuary cities designation, at some point, I feel like there's going to be a tipping point in New York City's already sort of reached that, and now been seeing this sort of adjustment in response on how to sort of properly accommodate enough migrants that are coming, which is to say they can accommodate all of them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think we got one last question but this one you already kind of answered it, but I really wanted to go over it again so it can be clear.
Yeah.
It was speaking to, because I lost it. It was somebody texted me, but it was speaking to, you went over the rights that a person has to report, workplace discrimination.
Yeah.
But then you also spoke to what happens if there's retaliation, or what happens if there's what happens after that. Like, what rights does a person have after that? And I know you had mentioned they can qualify, some people can qualify for certain visas if they get discriminated against, hate crimes and all of these different things. But if you report something, workforce was saying, okay, now you lose your job, because the job may be shut down or whatever the case is. What is
You
there
could
afterwards for a person to do?
you could I think you could still use that instance of real retaliation as part of your case or complaint.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you still feel unsafe about whatever happens during the reporting process, especially if the situation escalates, that just puts more, hopefully, that just takes more legal power out of your employer's hands.
Mm,
That,
okay.
yeah, just, if especially if you have, you know, enough, say, documentation or proof, depending on, how discreet you want to be with it, but also still, being mindful of, yeah,
Yeah.
not being
Gotcha.
retaliated against worse.
Sure. Sure. And I think, oh, we did. I forgot there was one more. Sorry. That this is from a business owner, I would presume. Is it discriminatory to not hire someone if they don't, if you don't know their immigration status for fear that your business may be shut down?
I mean, if it's out of explicit, I mean, that's so you just still ask yourself the question, are you hiring them to do the job? Or, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Because then I think that would go to the question is, can you get shut down just for hiring an undocumented person? You know?
yeah, generally, so, like I mentioned earlier with
Yeah.
the, ICE enforcement actions, even though under the Biden administration, uh, enforcement priorities changed, where, ICE raids wouldn't really occur unless, if, say, probably there was like a life-threatening circumstance. Uh, there could be a change in enforcement priorities in the next couple months.
Yeah.
Um, so, um, remind me the question one more time.
It was is it discriminatory to not hire someone if you don't know their
I
immigration status for fear that your business would be shut down? Mm.
mean, uh, I'd recommend I mean, I just don't want to be in the place of, say, a lawyer sort of trying to answer that question.
Mm-hmm.
You know best what your business needs are. If it's less than 5 employees for the business, I'd say you probably worry less. If it's more, I mean, yeah, uh, I'd recommend you still consult a lawyer.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a good answer. I like that. Like the Quran says, when you don't know, ask those who know. So, that's a perfect answer.
Business,
Hmm? What'd you say, brother?
business, a business lawyer, probably.
Business lawyer. Yeah, we have one more question. Oh, someone asked, oh, can you obtain an NYC ID on a visa with a visa?
You can obtain NYC ID regardless of your circumstance. You can obtain it if you're on DACA, if you're a citizen, if you're undocumented, if you're TPS, anyone can get an NYC ID. One thing to keep in mind, the wait lines are very long. I've been able to get an NYC ID yet myself.
Wow, subhanAllah. Yeah, that's serious. Yeah, yeah. Because I remember when it was like that. Because I remember during the pandemic, when they first started allowing those who are to get driver's license or like IDs from the DMV. Oh, it was next to impossible to get into the DMV at that point. It
To
was
wait like a good 2, 3 months to get one, and
yeah.
I don't know if they're doing in-person appointments anymore, but
Wow.
ever since I've been trying to get an ID since COVID, they've only been doing in-person appointments.
Wow.
Like their system's a mess sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's not a lot of places anymore like it used to be. A lot of places that because it used to be in the libraries and all of that stuff, it's not there anymore. They have them in
Huh.
certain buildings and that's it now.
Yeah.
Subhanallah. Okay. All right. I
But yeah,
think,
anyone can get
Mhm.
NYC ID.
Yeah, okay. That's excellent. Excellent. Excellent information. Barakallah fikum, brother. I appreciate you. This was definitely needed and definitely going to share this more in the community. Like I said, we had people watching online at on Facebook and on whatever else, Instagram, whatever else we have on it. We in many different places. Alhamdulillah, thank you for answering the questions. And inshallah, we have to, do a couple more things together, inshallah, if that's possible.
Definitely.
Yeah,
Thanks so much
sure.
for having me. And yeah, let me know if there's any specific material from the presentation you'd like me to send, any one pagers or
For sure.
you know.
For sure. I'll definitely let you know because I know it's a lot. But I'll get back to you when they get back to me and show. So thank you so much, brother. Thank everyone for watching. For those who could stay in the 10. This is the Yusma. Assalamu alaikum. We miss our sister, man. She used to always be on with us all the time. I see her in the building. So I had to give her a shout out, inshallah. Kiss that baby for us. All right. All right, brother. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum. Thanks for watching our video. Please subscribe, like, and share at Muslim Peer Services. Assalamu alaikum.